Another abiotic factor that affects the types of species that are present in the ecosystem is the frequency and severity and the predictability of disturbances. For example, the tidal zones have predictable disturbances when the tide goes in and out twice a day, every day. Therefore, organisms that live in the tidal zones have evolved mechanisms to cope between the two extremes of being exposed to the sun and being totally submerged. Agriculture, commercial fishing, urbanization, and many other human activities also disrupt ecosystems. The ponderosa pine forests of northern Arizona are adapted to low-intensity fires that occur every 5 to 10 years. Our forests have experienced a lot of fire suppression, which has changed the ecological dynamic of our forests. Modern forestry practices, however, are trying to restore those natural processes through thinning and prescribed burns, amongst other things. These forestry practices are an attempt to return forests to equilibrium, which is the dynamic state of an ecosystem in which, despite of changes in the number of species and occurrences, biodiversity is relatively constant. Different species have different adaptive strategies to cope with disturbances. Our ponderosa pine, for example, are excellent examples of ecosystem resistance. Ponderosa pines are adapted to low intensity, high frequency fires, and we can see that their bark here is going to provide insulation of the living cells between the bark and the wood, provide insulation from the heat of those fires. Resistance is the ability of an ecosystem to remain at equilibrium despite disturbances. The other strategy is called resilience, or the ability to bounce back or return to that equilibrium state following a disturbance. These Gambel's oak, who haven't quite woken up from their winter sleep, are a good example of this. They use this strategy to resprout after fire, forming these big colonies like this.